The position Roeloefs defends he calls combinationism, which he describes as follows. The experiential properties of a conscious subject are sometimes mere combinations of the experiential properties of other subjects which compose it. So first of all, what we have here are composite subjects and the component subjects. And the composite subjects are formed from, they are combinations of the component subjects, and sometimes the experiences of the composite subjects are formed from, they are combinations of the experiences of the relevant component subjects. Now, as you can see in the slide, Roeloefs presents a worked out statement of combination in terms of full grounding and full explanation. Now, a thorough examination of combinationism would require that we look in detail at these ideas. And rather than trying to do that in this short paper, I'm going to appeal to a more rough and ready notion of what's going on here. So very roughly, what combination involves is the following. That we have the property token big P, and all that's necessary for big P to exist is for the different little p's to each exist and for them all to be arranged in the right way. That's all that's necessary for big P to exist. And furthermore, all that's required to explain why big P exists is to appeal to the different little p's and how they're arranged. Now, in looking at combinationism, it will help to take a toy example. So the toy example, we have three subjects, A, B, and C. C is a composite subject composed of A and B. And each of these subjects has a token experience. A has the token experience E1, B has the token experience E2, C has the token experience E3. And on combinationism, E3 is fully grounded in and fully explainable by E1 and E2 suitably arranged. Now I'm going to make a further supposition here. I'm assuming that E3 includes each of E1 and E2 as proper parts. That is to say, they are literally in and thereby help to make up E3. And so the subject C, which experiences E3, also experiences both E1 and E2. So it follows from this that numerically distinct subjects can each have the very same token experience. In this example, the token experience E1 is had by the subject A and also by the subject C. And this is something that Roeloefs himself accepts and has defended in other work. So it's a very controversial claim, but I'm assuming it here for the purposes of this discussion. So what this toy example gives rise to is what I can call the problem of the unity of composite experiences. So the problem is, how can experiences belonging to distinct subjects, namely E1 and E2, how can they be related so as to form a single unified experience, E3? Now, in approaching questions of unity like this, there are two very broad approaches that we can take, which we can term the Leibnizian approach and the Newtonian approach. This terminology was coined by Farid Mesrour, and he's referring back to debates in modern philosophy about the nature of space, but those debates aren't going to be directly relevant. So what we need rather are the two broad approaches. So on the Leibnizian approach, this is a view of unity that builds global unity from local relations. Global unity here simply means the unity of the whole, whatever whole or complex entity we're concerned with. So, and Mesrour describes this in terms of a view of the nature of space, which is often attributed to Leibniz. As he says, what makes it the case that 2 points are in the same space is the simple fact that there is a determinate distance between the two. So the idea is that we have a number of different points, and what grounds their belonging to the same space is that each point stands in a determinate distance relation to each of the others. And in contrast, the Newtonian approach to unity says that the parts are related to each other in virtue of or because they belong to that whole. So in the case of space, the most fundamental fact that grounds relations of co-spatiality between various points is the fact that these points are part of the same single space. So note that the Leibnizian and the Newtonian approaches to space, they can agree on the facts as to which points are co-spatial or which points are located in the same space. What they disagree on is how to explain that, or what it is which makes it the case that these points are located in the same space. So to illustrate this difference in approaches, we can consider a more homely example. Consider the unity of the bricks which make up a wall. So you have the bricks that are arranged in a certain way and they form a wall. And you can ask the question, are the bricks in the wall because they stand on each other, or do they stand on each other because they form part of the wall? And I suggest that intuitively we want to say that it's the Leibnizian approach is the correct one here. That is to say, the bricks belong to the wall because they are arranged in the right spatial relations. And these spatial relations are local in that one brick stands on top of another, that brick stands on top of another. And by chaining these relations together, we produce the overall unity. So this looks like a case where the Leibnizian approach is correct. So why is this relevant to combinationism? Well, as I said, combinationism has a problem concerning explaining the unity of composite experiences. Now, there's a number of different ways in which conscious experiences can be said to be unified, but for our purposes, the most important is what's termed phenomenal unity. And this is often described also as experience togetherness or co-consciousness. So let's introduce it with an example. So we very often talk about token experiences in terms of there being something it's like. So there's something it's like to taste coffee, and there's something it's like to hear the opening notes of Once in a Lifetime. And these are distinct experiences, but we can also add there's something it's like to experience these together. There's something it's like not only to taste coffee and something it's like to hear the opening notes, but there's something it's like to taste coffee and hear the opening notes together. And in that case, these experiences are phenomenally unified. So the combinationist says E3 is a composite experience. It's made up of E1 and E2, suitably related. So E3 is a phenomenally unified experience, and the combinationist says E3's phenomenal unity must be explained by and grounded in E1 and E2 being suitably related. So this is to take a Leibnizian approach to explaining the phenomenal unity. To quote Roeloefs, conscious unity is something explained by the way that experiences spread among separate subjects are related. That is to say, the conscious unity enjoyed by the composite subject. So it's a Leibnizian approach. And in principle, you could consider a number of different possible relations between the distinct component experiences. But one of these relations, which Roeloefs himself considers, is precisely phenomenal unity. So the thought here is that we explain the overall experience by local relations of phenomenal unity between the different component experiences. Now, there are other possibilities, other ways to proceed here, which I'll come back to later, but that's the target suggestion for the moment. And there's a principled problem with this suggestion. So there's a principled problem facing Leibnizian accounts of phenomenal unity. Now, I'm not going to present a knockdown argument here, because to do that, I would need to take account of the different ways in which phenomenal unity and co-consciousness are formulated by different philosophers. But what I'm going to do is outline what I think is a line of thought which shows that there is a problem here for the Leibnizian approach. So there's 4 steps to this line of thought. So the first step is to note that we characterize token experiences in terms of there being something it is like. There's something it's like to taste coffee, for example. Now, implicitly, this something it is like is for a subject, the subject who has the experiences. There's something it's like for me to taste coffee. So that claim more or less everyone accepts. The second claim is more substantive. It's the claim that for a token experience to occur just is for a subject to instantiate a certain phenomenal property, where a phenomenal property is defined as one which is essentially such that instantiations of it are like something for a subject. So there's a phenomenal property which is such that if I instantiate it, I would have an experience of tasting coffee, or as of tasting coffee. Now this, as I say, is a more substantive claim, but it is a well-established claim, and there's a number of defenses of it in the literature, and it's also quite close to some of the things Luke says himself in Combining Minds. Third claim concerns phenomenal unity itself. So we characterize it in terms of something it is like, there being something it is like to both F and G. There's something it's like to taste coffee and hear the opening notes of Once in a Lifetime. And again, as with the first claim, this something it is like is implicitly for a subject. And something to note here is that the same subject must experience both F and G in order that they are to be phenomenally unified. In order that there is something that's like to F and G, the same subject must experience F and G. And then we have the fourth claim, which comes from combining claim 2 with claim 3. So claim 2 was a claim about what it is for a token experience to occur, and now we apply that to the example of experience togetherness we have in claim 3. So the suggestion here is that for phenomenally unified experiences to occur, just is for a subject to instantiate phenomenal properties where those phenomenal properties stand in some sort of suitable relation. So why is this important? Well, note first of all, the conclusion is not just that phenomenally unified experiences must be had by the same subject, because most people discussing this will agree on that point. The conclusion is stronger. The conclusion is that what it is for distinct experiences to be phenomenally unified, or to be experienced together, is at least in part for them to be experienced by one and the same subject. Or to put it another way, we can't understand the nature of phenomenal unity, or what it is for distinct experiences to be phenomenally unified, without understanding that they belong to the same subject. So this is a claim that I've defended also in previously published work. Now we can put the claim in another way. We can say that being experienced together, being phenomenally unified, it is a way of being experienced by the same subject. Now there are other ways in which distinct experiences can be had by the same subject. So for example, if I taste some coffee and then a few minutes later I hear the opening notes to Once in a Lifetime, I have had two distinct experiences, but plausibly they are not phenomenally unified. I don't experience one with the other in the right way. So there can be cases where two experiences are had by the one subject, but where they are not phenomenally unified, they are not experienced together. But what I'm suggesting is that there are other cases where the one subject can have the two experiences, they are experienced together, and being experienced together is a way of being experienced by the same subject. Note also, I've been talking about phenomenally unified experiences being experienced by the same subject. It's important to point out, this does not rule out that the distinct experiences which are unified, those very token experiences, can also be had by other subjects. So in our example, nothing I've said so far rules out that A has E1 and B has E2. So what I've said here is actually compatible with the following claim, that experiences belonging to distinct subjects can themselves be phenomenally unified. What I'm insisting, though, is that if those experiences are phenomenally unified, they're phenomenally unified in virtue of being experienced by one and the same subject. Now, this conclusion undermines the Leibnizian approach. Now, why does it do this? Because the Leibnizian approach attempts to build up the overall unity by chaining together the local relations. And what I'm suggesting is that these local relations only hold between, for example, E1 and E2. They only hold in virtue of a global factor already being in place. The global factor here being that one and the same subject experiences E1 and E2. So it turns out that the unity that we're trying to explain cannot be built up from local relations in the way that the Leibnizian approach tries to elaborate. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are other forms of unity between experiences other than phenomenal unity. And this prompts another suggestion. So what if we adopt reductionism about phenomenal unity? That is to say, for two experiences to be phenomenally unified is fully grounded in some other forms of unity which hold between those experiences. So for example, those experiences might be functionally unified. They might work together as part of an overall functional system, or they might be causally interdependent. They might be representationally unified. So two experiences are representationally unified if they combine to present a single object or a single scene. Or they might be unified by awareness, where distinct experiences are unified by awareness if they are both objects of the same act of awareness. So perhaps it's possible to reduce phenomenal unity to one of these other, or one or more of these other types of unity, and perhaps this will let us get around the problem. because this might be an alternative way in which we can set about trying to explain the unity of composite experiences. Now, I don't want to say that this is impossible. I don't want to rule it out completely. But what I will say is that in order for this to work, the other forms of unity would themselves have to be Leibnizian. That is to say, they would have to be local relations which could be chained together and not hold in virtue of some global factor already being in place, like the same subject. And it's not clear that this is actually feasible. So to very quickly take one example, suppose we say that E1 and E2 are phenomenally unified in virtue of being objects of a single act of awareness. Now, here's a question. What is it which is aware of both E1 and E2? And presumably it's not going to be A, because A has experienced E1, but it does not have experience E2. Likewise B. So it looks like in our little toy scenario, the only plausible candidate is going to be precisely subject C. So subject C would be aware of both E1 and E2. But then this looks again as though this form of unity, this awareness unity, only holds in virtue of subject C already being in the picture. So it looks again as though the Leibnizian approach is undermined. Now, I've been talking so far about a problem of unity concerning composite experiences, but I want to talk quickly about a different issue facing combinationism, which is the problem of subject composition, which very roughly is the problem of how do component subjects form composite subjects. And one suggestion here is that we can appeal to a relation called phenomenal bonding. And phenomenal bonding is simply introduced as a relation between component experience which necessitates that when they stand in this relation, they together form a composite subject. Now, of course, that itself doesn't tell us very much. In fact, you would think it leaves the nature of this relation completely open. But it has been suggested by Roeloefs and by other people in the literature, like Gregory Miller, that this phenomenal bonding relation is in fact phenomenal unity among experiences. That is to say, when you have two subjects whose experiences are phenomenally unified, that necessitates that they together form a further subject. So phenomenal unity on this approach would be phenomenal bonding, and it would explain how component subjects form composite subjects. Now, if what I've said earlier is correct, then it looks like phenomenal unity cannot provide a Leibnizian solution or a correct Leibnizian account of subject composition. Because on this understanding of phenomenal bonding as phenomenal unity, it holds between A and B in virtue of their each being related to C. Because it only holds between A and B insofar as the experience of A, E1, and the experience of B, E2 are co-conscious, and I've argued are phenomenally unified, and I've argued that they're phenomenally unified partly because they are both experienced by C. So once again, this proposed Leibnizian solution doesn't appear to work because there is a global factor. The subject to be unified must already be in the picture. Now, what's the upshot of all this? I've suggested that combinationism is naturally understood as offering a Leibnizian account of the unity of composite experiences and also the unity of composite subjects. And I've been arguing that the nature of phenomenal unity challenges these proposed explanations. Now, this does leave open a number of possibilities. As I mentioned, one possibility is to reduce phenomenal unity to some other kind of relation between experiences and hope that that relation allows for a Leibnizian account of the unity of conscious experiences. Another option might be to provide some other Leibnizian account of phenomenal bonding and then use the composite subject to provide a non-Leibnizian account of the unity of experiences. But there is a third option here to mention, which is that it may be that there are subjects which include other subjects as parts, but that combinationism is false. Because combinationism is the view that certain subjects are fully grounded in their component subjects. But my suggestion here is that maybe we have composite subjects which are something over and above and are not fully grounded in the subjects which make them up. Thank you.